I want to bring in two former jurors who are no stranger to high-profile cases. Jessica Hubenek served on the jury in the second corruption trial of former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich, and Kathleen Carmody was a juror in the corruption trial of former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell. Duncan Levin is also back with me here on set. Kathleen, in your case, you turned around a verdict in 3 days after a 5-week trial. Take me inside that room. You've just been handed the case, as the Trump jurors have. What's the first thing you did as a group?
Basically, when we went around the table, I believe there were 14 counts, federal charges against both Bob McDonnell and his wife, Maureen. So we just took it one at a time and talked about the evidence for each, and just one at a time, because it was just a lot to go through.
Today, when they were when the judge Merchan was giving the jury instructions, he said, you know, you can't take into account who the defendant is. And he had said at another point, and I think in the closing, the prosecutor said, you know, everybody's equal under the law. But were you hyper aware of the status of the person you were judging? Is it possible to say, I'm going to treat this person like any other person?
Yes, and I was very aware that this was the former governor and his wife sitting there. However, I went in, and I believe that all my fellow jurors went in as well with an open mind and listened to the evidence as presented.
Jessica, I would say Rod Blagojevich was a colorful character. He certainly knew how to get a lot of publicity. I'm guessing that most of the people on that jury were well aware of who he was, and there he was, as Donald Trump is, sitting inside that courtroom every day. Was it hard to not let that influence you? Any preconceived notions that you or others may have had about him?
I think for me, I came in there fairly unbiased. I hadn't really been following the previous trial. When I got called for jury duty, I did a little research and kind of knew beforehand that it was going to be the trial for Blagojevich. And I think that a lot of the jurors that were selected did a great job of evaluating all the evidence. We spent 10 days in deliberations. We reread all the evidence, re-listened to all the 8 hours of phone calls, and really went over every single count one by one, analyzing and getting consensus on each one. So I think for us, it was just a great group, and we worked together really well. And for me, I don't think I came in there with any bias. I was very open-minded, and I wanted to actually see that Blagojevich might be innocent of some of these counts. Didn't happen to be very many, but that was my stance at first, and just the evidence was very compelling, and we voted the way we thought was best.
I mean, it sounds like you were incredibly thorough. Was there any point at which you thought we might not be able to come to a consensus here?
We did have one juror who was not sure about the decision he wanted to make. So the fellow jurors, we just went through the evidence again and just talked him through it, what his concerns were and how we saw things and so forth. It did take a little bit of convincing.
Jessica, did you find there was some back and forth?
There was only about 3 counts that we had a little bit back and forth, and that took a couple of days to sort out. For most of them, we were just very thorough. I had 2 notebooks full of notes. Everybody else took great notes and really listened. We did have to comb over all of the evidence. There was piled up with papers and phone calls and things we had to listen to and go through. So I think we were just very thorough, but I don't think there was a lot of disagreement in our.
Does anything, Duncan, you're hearing from them surprise you? I mean, there they were, just, you know, toughing it out, working it through. I'm guessing that some people who are listening, who just want to know what's going to happen here, are saying, oh my gosh, maybe this will take days and days and days for Donald Trump. But what's your reaction to what they're telling you about being inside the deliberation room?
It's fascinating. And at the same time, a lot of us who have tried cases often go back and talk to the jurors at the end of the case and get a feedback on what they thought was compelling or what they didn't think was compelling. And these types of stories you hear over and over from jurors who come into a room, total strangers, don't know each other, having heard the same set of facts, the same set of witnesses, and can take away different things from it. And they bring their preconceived notions of the world. And that's why we have the system we have. The judge said, and the prosecution said, and the defense said, you don't leave your common sense at the door when you come in to deliberate. And these jurors are actually brought in to have all of their real world experiences bared to light in the back of that room. And so these are the kinds of stories that we hear time and again, and they're powerful because it's people taking it seriously, as I know everyone has said, really trying to work out their differences as people from all different types of, walks of life. You have people who are, employed, unemployed, who are white collar, blue collar, who are from, different boroughs or here, all Manhattan. But you have people who are really trying to work out differences and come collectively to unanimity, which is not always easy.
So, Kathleen and Jessica, I'm going to ask you the same question, and I'll start with you, Kathleen. I mean, one of the things that it struck me today is, wow, these folks have been here week after week after week. Last night, they were at the courthouse until 8 o'clock at night. Both of you spent many weeks on a jury. And I wonder what the pressure was like, first of all, Kathleen, and then what's it like to go home at night in the middle of deliberations when you can't talk about it, you can't tell anybody in your family about it, and you have to try to get some sleep?
Yes, you're right. It is very difficult. It was a 5-week trial, and then the deliberations started. And we were instructed by the judge not to talk about it. So breaking up the deliberation from one day to the next, yes, going home and not being able to talk about anything that was discussed for the past 8-9 hours, it is very difficult, not watching TV, not looking at the newspaper on the table, not letting the radio come on, just trying to remain very neutral and thinking about everything. It was a hard night, too, just thinking about everything, having everything churn over in my head, thinking about the evidence and how it was going to go the next day.
Jessica, I'm always amazed that people do this and do it so well. What was it like for you?
Well, our trial was 2 months long, so that was quite a lengthy trial. The deliberations were 10 days. During that time, I shut down all of my social media at that time. I didn't want to have any questions or what I was doing. And then going home at night, not being able to talk to my husband or my daughter about what I was doing. And I mean, obviously they knew I was on the jury, but that was difficult. And the 10 days we deliberated, we really spent a lot of time and really thought about, the decisions we were making. And regardless, I think when someone is guilty, it's still a tough decision. Definitely a lot of anxiety, some sleepless nights that came with it, especially during the deliberations. It's never an easy decision to send somebody to prison.
So both of them came to a unanimous decision, both of them guilty. It only takes one, though, as you know, Duncan, to trigger a mistrial. And Harry Litman, who's been attending the trial and is actually there today, I saw him today, he said, one juror that people are worried about, and I share that worry, can't identify him or her per judge's orders, but seems less engaged and slightly irritable. I know that there's this perception that you can read jurors to some extent. And I'm not going to lie, based on what Harry said and the article that he was quoted in, I was keeping my eye out. And there was, I think, one juror to my eye who maybe was looking around a little more than anybody else and seemed, but I wouldn't call him irritable, less engaged. He just was observing things differently. Is it a fool's errand to And we all do it, guilty, watch a jury and think, oh, that's the one.
I think it's human nature. It's natural. It's interesting how much we're watching the jury right now. For the last several weeks, don't forget, the jury's been watching the lawyers. They've been watching Mr. Trump. And as much as we're intently talking about this, they may be back there saying, did you see that the defendant or Mr. Trump did this? Or did you see the demeanor of a witness? So we're all watching each other and not knowing. I can tell you that I have often spoken to jurors at the end of a trial, and I was wrong about who I thought might be a problem, and you never really know. So we're reading tea leaves, and it's, for the next several hours, and maybe all we have to do is to read tea leaves, but we may be right, we may be wrong. I think that there are jurors who pay attention in all sorts different types of ways. Some people are note takers. Some people just have a photographic memory. Some read a lot of conservative media, but might still convict. Some read a lot of liberal media and might still acquit. We don't know. So the point is that as much as we're watching them, we may be right, we may be wrong. We're going to find out pretty soon, though.